My name is Irena Swanson, and this is the third part in the series showing how to make rows of squares on point. In the first video I showed how to make one such row at a time with 6 seams total. In the second part I showed how to make 2 rows at a time with 9 seams total, so with only 4.5 seams per row. And in this part I will show how to make 3 or more rows at a time even more efficiently. For 3 rows we need 13 seams, for 4 rows 15 seams, so fewer than 4 seams per row. For 5 seams we need 17 seams, and so on. However, in this size we may not want to make 5 or more rows at a time because the circumference of the tubes will be just a little bit too big for comfortable cutting. Why 3 videos? Well, when making 3 or more rows at a time, the strip set is wide enough so it can go immediately into the tube. But when making 2 or 1 row at a time, we take the strip set and cut it in half lengthwise and sew the 2 parts together sideways. For 1 row at a time, we repeat this, shorten and widen and maneuver one more time, and only then is the circumference, is the width of the strip set wide enough so that the circumference of the tubes is comfortable to sew with. The first video showed how to make these rows also in other sizes, and if the size is smaller, then we can make 5 or more rows likely. And actually, when the squares are much smaller, we want to make more than 1 row at a time to get comfortable circumference width. With more than 1 row at a time, we have ways of changing triangle colors on the 2 sides. We can even mix and match. We can mix and match the square colors and so on. So let's get started. For this size, we cut the strips for the squares at 5 inches wide, strips for the triangles between 6 and 7 inches wide. And if we want to play around with different designs and color placements, we should press all seam allowances either all towards the square fabrics or all towards the triangle fabrics. It doesn't matter which, but do one. Once the seam allowances are pressed, we want to sew the 2 outside strips, and we want to make sure that the bottom edge has no fold like this, so we have to move around. Okay. So then after that we sew the seam, we get a tube. Here is the last seam. I do like to press the outside and then slide the iron inside, reach deep inside, or possibly reach from the other side. I like to turn my tubes inside out so I can see what's happening. Here I'm making 3 at a time. The squares will be baseballs. Then we cut the tube into narrow tubes. The size of the narrow tubes is 5 inches, and we get 8 of these narrow tubes. Here we're again making 3 identical rows at a time. Let's switch now to an example with 4 at a time. Here I have 2 colors, here 2 other colors in the back. So here I can really play with how I combine the colors. I could have 4 uniform colors in the rows. I could shift these to switch. We would get 2 identical rows switching the reds and teals, and in the back we would get 2 identical rows switching those. Rather than rotating those, we could rotate these in other ways to get all sorts of other designs. We can get 2 uniform color rows and 2 switching rows. We can get 4 distinct switching rows. We can get random designs and so on. Alright, here is an example like this. I have 2 purple rows and 2 green rows. And then we want to convert this tube into a parallelogram. So we choose any one of the triangle diagonals. We mark halfway between these, along these seams. We could be more or less precise. Mark with a pencil a future cutting line halfway down that diagonal. Then we cut one layer of the tube only along the marked diagonal, along the marked line. And then when we cut all the way around, we get a parallelogram. And here I pressed, after it was cut into a parallelogram, I like to press all rows or X tubes in one direction. Here I have 4 different uniform color rows. Here is another example. Again, I get 4 rows, but 2 of them are identically red, 2 of them are identically teal. I could cut this in half down the middle and then sew the bottom of this part to the top of that, and I would get 2 double height rows like this with only 16 seams total. That's very fast. And how about this design here? I also made here 4 rows at a time, and I used 4 different triangle fabrics, 4 different square fabrics, made the narrow tubes out of those, and then I made another set of narrow tubes from 8 other fabrics, and then I took 4 narrow tubes from one set and 4 narrow tubes from the other set and combined them. Here you can see this was part of the narrow tube, that continues there, that continues there. So these were narrow tubes, and now I have leftover tubes. If you make these out of 8 plus 8 fat quarters, there will be no leftover tubes to deal with. I hope that you enjoyed my videos on making these rows of squares, and I have a lot of work to do incorporating all these sample rows into quilts. Thank you for watching.